I want to start by thanking Renee and Debbie for leading into this for me last week by speaking about our true value in Christ and being authentic. If you weren't here for those, I do recommend that you see the videos. I'm going to speak today about the woman with the bleeding. Reading from Mark chapter 5, verses 24 to 34. So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she was worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his robe, for she said, "If I can just touch his robes, I will be made well." Instantly, her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was cured of her affliction. At once, Jesus realized in himself that power had gone out from him, and he turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my robes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" So he was looking around to see who had done this. And then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came with fear and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your affliction." When I think about this passage, 5 things really stand out for me. First, she wants to be well. She's tried everything she can find. Second, she recognizes that Jesus can heal her, but she's unclean. How can she approach him? Third, Jesus knows that she reached out to him, and he invites her to speak. Fourth, she accepts his invitation, even though she's trembling in fear, and she tells him the truth. And 5, he confirms her healing and he sets her free. The story of this woman and the points that stand out to me in it remind me how I was when I came to Harvest. I was out of options, emotionally scarred beyond any cure. I'd had one professional tell me that I would be in that state forever, that there was no prospect of change. He was quite comfortable giving me that assessment and telling me to learn to live within my limitations. But Charlie and Lisa saw something different, and they knew something that I didn't. They knew that Aaron was a counsellor. That didn't actually impress me much. I'd been to more counsellors over the years than I can count on both hands and both feet, and in all that time, only one had made the slightest difference to how I was able to cope with life. And due to various factors at the time, I wasn't able to continue seeing her beyond just a few sessions. Nevertheless, Aaron had offered to see me, and so I had a decision to make. What finally convinced me was hearing him speak one Sunday and say that in the course of his training, they'd been taught that 85% of people being counselled will never get well, but that he didn't hold to that. He believed that almost everyone could get well. For the first time in many, many years, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Still, it didn't seem fair for Aaron to take me on without knowing some of my history, because I'd already had plenty of experience that anyone who knew even some of the things I'd done would not want anything to do with me, especially a pastor. My previous efforts at being authentic had not gone well, but I can't live comfortably if I feel like I'm behind a mask. So I spent many hours one night typing him up a fairly in-depth summary of the most heinous of my sins, so he knew just what he was getting. Probably took him the better part of an hour to read it. But instead of him telling me what a mess I was, he just thanked me for the background and asked me when I'd like to start seeing him. He didn't throw me out. He didn't say anything that indicated that he felt disgust or revulsion at what I'd disclosed. It was like he saw me as someone whose past was in the past, not hanging around the present like a bad smell or sprayed like graffiti over my future. I couldn't reconcile his attitude with that of others I'd known in my past, even though it's how I always try to treat others. You know that golden rule that Jesus gave us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? I started that first session by asking him if he really wanted to take me on, explaining to him, I've already done 15 years of counselling and I've got nowhere. He could be committing to years of seeing me at the special rate he'd offered, cutting his income for all that time. He just looked at this hurting and distrustful person in front of him. He promised me that he was prepared to make that commitment. He told me that he would be there for as long as it took. And he told me that he believed that I was worth it. I wasn't quite sure I believed him, but I had nothing to lose and everything to gain, and so that leg of my journey began. In counselling, he taught me many things. Some of them were treated to in his sermons on a regular basis, so there's ongoing refreshers and new pointers if needed. He helped me to learn the truth about my past. Were there times I could have made better decisions? Undoubtedly. Did I have the tools at that time to have been able to make those better decisions? Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Was everything my fault? Actually, not all of it. And most of all, after everything I'd done, did I still have any value? Absolutely, positively, yes. Aaron helped me to understand that the head knowledge that I had of the value God places on me needed to reach my heart, needed to become a part of the way I saw myself. He walked with me through my minefield of stumbling blocks and set me homework after each session to help me stay on the path. Slowly, I began to be able to find the path by myself. And eventually I had to tell him at the end of one session, with tears in my eyes, that I didn't think I needed to see him for counselling anymore. I couldn't believe it. I could still so clearly remember sitting in front of him just 10 short sessions before, feeling absolutely convinced that there was no way that I would ever be someone who felt strong sometimes, someone who believed in themselves, and someone who knew beyond a doubt that God wasn't the only one outside of my family who saw me as someone of value. In a very real way, Aaron clearly demonstrated the love Jesus has for me, and in doing so allowed me to truly accept the gift of abundant life that Jesus came to give us. So back to the woman with the bleeding. She's only one person, and Jesus has a whole world to save. He recognises our longing, our feelings of unworthiness. He invites us to come and to speak to the truth to him, and he sets us free. But so many people don't know how to reach him because they recognise that they're unclean, and he wants to use us to reach out to them. As we take communion this morning, I want to invite you to think about how you can demonstrate Jesus' love to those people you meet, those hurting, bitter, distrustful people who may even appear to be pushing you away. How can you demonstrate Jesus' love to them in such a way that they too can come to know abundant life in Jesus?